Thank you for joining us at the Roundtable.
Brought to you by Community Education Arts, a nonprofit organization based in Noblesville, Indiana.
I'm Alice Cavanis-Gober, President of CEArts.
And I'm Sarah E. Morin, Secretary of CEArts. Let's sit down
at the Roundtable.
Having it in print is, to get back to that,
sure.
is, I now have a sense of belonging.
Mm.
And, as I'm seeking that place to land, as I'm seeking, that tribe, when I got home and was looking through the Polk Street Review after I got my first copy, I know that there'll be more copies to get. It's just amazing to me the level and the artistry of the wordsmiths and the photographers and what they see and how they see it, and it just like, I am a part of that. And that gets me back to that.
And that's what's important about a physical book. You talked about in 2015 when Bill and Kurt didn't have a book, and I presented at that book launch that wasn't, is how we can. A lot of people did, and I remember very clearly feeling very disappointed that there wasn't a book for my wonderful thing that I had written, and the audience was disappointed. You could feel it. People spoke about it with no book, or this was great, but there's no book, and that's really what I thought. That was the moment where I thought we could do this. My little 501c3, we could do this. We could publish this book.
Yeah,
this is important. This book needs to happen. And what you said, Deborah, makes me feel like that was a good leap of faith. And the faith has paid off, because even at the book launch the other night, so many people, I'm sure they told you too, Sarah E. You and I were doing so much we didn't really get to confabulate very much, but so many people told me how wonderful they thought the book launch was, and the whole project, and the fact that we do this meant so much to them, and they were so grateful. And that again is something that when the dark of night, the days you're doing the grunt work behind the scenes, you don't know, is anybody going to care,
Oh my, yes.
And it was so,
yes.
it was really, I think that the part for us, what makes the book launch night so special is that we do get some of that feedback that we might not get,
Right, yeah. I think for us, having both prongs are essential.
Yes.
I know, because we both started as contributors before we became in charge.
Yeah.
And for me, I was looking for a publication credit so I could go do something else. But also, there was that sense of community to really contribute to something that we had all made together, and going there in person and feeling the energy of that many creators supporting each other. And it was just electric, even though I wasn't presenting that night, just to be, feeling that vibe.
Yeah, and I think something that we don't talk about very much, but it might be important to say at this point, especially with the Polk Street Review project, is that back in the day when Bill and Kurt were doing it, and you and I would submit, and we didn't know each other back then, by the way. You and I didn't know each other. I would submit, and I would usually submit 3 or 4 pieces, because I tend to write a lot. And I was always kind of crushed when one of them didn't get selected, or and I know Bill and Kurt. I didn't know Kurt as well as I do now at the time, but Bill is one of my younger brother's best friends for life, and so Bill's like my third little brother, and so but there's something about submitting to, even if you know the people who are going to be looking at your work, whether it's strangers or people there's something about submitting and being accepted that gives you a sense of greater belonging to not just the people that are in that group, but the world of writers, the world of artists. I mean, as an artist, for me, if I submit something and that piece of artwork is printed in a book or hung in a gallery in an exhibit or something, I am bonded to the great masters in a way, even though my work is nothing like theirs, But you know what I mean? You're suddenly, but suddenly you're in a community that's larger than your time and space even.
Right.
And I don't think we talk about that a lot in terms of a submissions-driven project. But actually, kind of both of our projects are submissions driven in a way, and I think with the Polk Street Review, I've talked to so many people who they're just shocked and amazed and so grateful that we chose their piece to be published. And I was like, are you kidding? It's wonderful. Why wouldn't we? I mean, I'm like, that's a no-brainer. But people don't take it for granted that they're going to be chosen to be published, and I forget that sometimes. I forget that we are kind of on that other side. I mean, there we were as submitters for years, and now we're on the other side of the project where we're the ones choosing what's going in the book, and it's several hats we're wearing, but you know, it's kind of I'm glad to have both experiences, and I feel like you know, Deborah, when you submit, I mean, I can't imagine not accepting something that you would submit ever, but I hope that you feel good when we say, oh, by the way, we are going to publish your piece, you know, you know, because I think I love that feeling, and I want everybody to have that feeling. So corny as that sounds.
I think I described it in my journal writing as the universal holy yes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. It does provide that sense of belonging and giving voice. I mean, there's something about the substantial impact of your words on a page or your image on a page.
Yeah, and I love that you say on a page, because again, we've got to have a physical book.
Right.
That's so important.
Right.
We're all word nerds. We all love writing. I mean, the three of us sitting here in this room, it's something we love. But I think just for the world at large and the greater community, one thing I've never done with the Polk Street Review since we started publishing it, I've never released the ebook version of it. I want people to buy the book. We very easily could, but I don't want to do that. But as much as I love digital content, which leads me to a question, I don't know where we are in our script thing, but I wanted to ask Deborah what since she's listened to our podcasts and videos, you know, having the Polk Street Review grow from being a book to a project that has so many different components, I wanted to ask, from your perspective, sort of the outside looking in, you've been participating in so many ways and so supportive. I wondered if you could share any thoughts on how you feel about that, or what you think. I mean, I think the book is always going to be the spine, the backbone of the project, but I think the podcasts and the videos and the workshops are also important. So I don't want to give short shrift to those components. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts or ideas or past experiences with workshops, anything like that might.
Well, it was
not to put you on the spot, but you know.
It was probably after last year's Polk Street Review. I was having coffee with a friend and talking about the experience and the pieces and giving the background for the submissions that got chosen for print, and you know, just kind of answering questions about, you know, what little I knew about the Polk Street Review and its history. And what I realized in the context of that conversation, and I didn't know it until I could hear my words falling out of my mouth, was that up until this point, I mean, it's been a very academic kind of training for my writing. You know, like, you know, all of the classes that I either took or I taught in composition and literary analysis and rhetoric and all of that, it was just very, you know, it was an academic past.
Sure.
And coming to you with these projects, with the Polk Street Review and the NICE projects, there was this opening, like I mentioned before. First of all, you gave me permission, which was something that, you know, that was something heavy to carry. I have permission now to think outside the box. You made it so holistic. I mean, it was like nothing was missed in the process. You know, there was, you know, whether it was, you know, this genre or this perspective of this literature or that perspective, or it was just so 360 in its scope and its offerings that my writing was like blossoming from within. And it wasn't as confined, it wasn't as formulaic as it had been in an academic milieu. And that's the one thing that I just, well, one of the many things that I just greatly appreciate about what you two offer this community and what you offer other artists, is this way for us to grow. You know, I didn't know I had it in me that I could paint. I didn't know I had it in me to, you know, consider a musical composition in the way of something almost ekphrastic to the words in front of the page, because the musical notes were giving more emotion than the syllables were at the time. And it was such a full experience that I was on a drunk for at least 3 days after
Project
each of
drunk,
yeah, project drunk after 3 days after
That's
each
very
of the
fulfilling
workshops.
for me to hear, because especially and I can really relate to what you're saying, because having you guys both know my academic background is as an anthropologist, and to go from lecturing on anthropology, writing papers on anthropology, which are, I loved it, but it's a certain kind of writing, academic writing, and and I think to go from that to that, I think my background as an anthropologist helps me put with projects like our projects, because I'm always trying to bring in the cultural traditions or narratives, or the important things that have to do with culture, the culture with the big C, but I also feel like it kind of did exactly the same thing for me. These projects are my creative way of going beyond that academic, which I love, that academic thinking, writing experience. I love that, but
I love a good Roman numeral outline.
but
I function well that
to
way.
go beyond that and have the freedom to write something that may not be grammatically, if you write prose poetry or something, there's not a lot of grammatical perfection. I think about Faulkner's writing, and he could have a 4-page sentence, and I'm like, I could maybe do that, but not as an academic,
Run with scissors.
Yeah, exactly. So we like to run with scissors, I guess, creatively. So I think that means a lot. I think that's an interesting insight for how projects like ours, arts projects, can help people of all kinds of art things do more than what they think they can do.
It reminds me of one of our core tenets of NICE from the beginning, which is we wanted anybody of any experience level to have a nice environment.
Exactly.
That was one of the reasons we picked that.
I know, we worked really hard to come up with 4 words that would spell nice.
And because we were playing by those rules from the beginning, like one of those first, also very freeing to think, okay, this isn't something I would normally do, but I have permission, because you and I said we had permission to try something new and to relate to it in a different way.
And that's such a different project than the Polk Street Review. Because the Polk Street Review, we will get to NICE in more detail, but the Polk Street Review, one thing I should have said at the history and the introduction part is our subtitle, beyond the each year we have a theme, but our subtitle is a celebration of Noblesville, Indiana. And I should have said that back in the day when Bill and Kurt did the book, that was literal. I mean, it was very local. It was, they had a hard and fast rule that you had to either be from Noblesville or connected to Noblesville, or your subject matter had to be connected to Noblesville. As our years have passed with this book, that is getting harder and harder for us to demand of our submitters, because we have that global presence and that international connection. And so I think that the celebration of Noblesville is still true, because the book, we put it together here. The book launch is here. It will always be here.
And not every community can come up with something this wonderful to show that this is a groovy place.
Yes, and that's the other thing. We are celebrating life, business, history of Noblesville. It's the people, the places, the things of Noblesville. And I would say probably 80% of submissions will always be fairly locally driven. And I think that's great. I think that's important. I want those memoirs, because I know myself, I was thinking about this the night of the book launch, and I almost said something in our introduction, and I didn't, because I knew I'd start crying. But I was thinking about my parents, and who were always such a big part of my life, my arts life and everything. And I was thinking there's so much about their lives, their parents' lives, their grandparents' lives, their great-grandparents' lives that I don't know. And I wish that my dad had written down the stories of his childhood when he would spend summers at his grandparents'. It was the only time he felt loved and safe, and I wish he'd written stuff like that. You know, I wish I wish I had a book full of that.
Yeah.
Now my mom wrote a lot of memoirs. My mom
Mm-hmm.
wrote a lot of poetry, so I have those. But there's still a lot of her life and her relatives and my ancestors that I don't know. And I think, my gosh, my own children don't know about who I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
My children don't. I mean, they know me, but they don't know what my childhood was like. I got so much to write down so that my grandchildren will know that stuff, you know. And so that's why, again, holding up a book, books are so important. And this book in particular, to get that local knowledge, that local history, the memoirs, the people who worked at Firestone, whose families generationally worked at places like Firestone, can tell those stories of what life was like in Noblesville throughout all those years. And so I think we will always have about 80% or so have that very local connection, which I think is wonderful also because it will show other communities that they can create a project that focuses on their community that way too. But we also can expand to include the greater world in that community.
Right.
So the greater world, and that's one of the questions we asked in one of our recent podcast video episodes was, what do you want the world to see how do you want the world to see your community? I want the world to see our community as this great arts place, right?
And that's what I see.
You know,
when
and
I see
it's
that.
of course it's more. There's other things about Noblesville, but that's our goal, is to help, you know, let the world know that Noblesville is an arts capital of the world, you know. Okay, we're not quite New York City yet, or Paris, France, but we're getting there, right?
The Midwest version.
One step at a time. Oh yeah, Chicago's like, what are you talking about? You know, but you know what I mean. I think that's really important. So.
This has been At the Round Table with Alice
And Sarah E.
of Community Education Arts.
Our nonprofit organization is based in Noblesville, Indiana. You can find us online at CEArts.org.
This activity made possible in part with support from the Indiana Arts Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
We'd like to thank James Weston for writing our intro music and for his technical savvy.
Join us next time
At the Round Table.